Chapter 42. Papa. Han Shuo spat out a few mouthfuls of saliva and his face flushed red. He hastily pried Fanny's hands off his neck and didn't know what had happened. He hastily said with a pained expression, "Master Fanny, what are you doing? I'm already like this, can't you be a little gentler?" Han Shuo's eyes suddenly widened as soon as he'd finished speaking and stared fixedly at Fanny and Lisa in front of him. The two were completely naked from the waist up and their fair, dainty beauty was completely revealed. Fanny's body was full of grace and beauty and Lisa's chest was beginning to bulge as she revealed her upper body to Han Shuo's eyes without reservation. The two wore undergarments that were as thin as cicadas' wings in the most crucial area of their lower bodies. The wet water soaked the thin and narrow undergarments. Although he couldn't see the entirety of their bodies, this kind of faintly discernible allure was even more fatal. It caused Han Shuo's brother, who had been about to droop down in shock, to once again stand up tenaciously. Brian, you've finally woken up. Master Fanny, why are you doing this to him?" Lisa was also at a loss as she walked over quickly and said anxiously, "Look at his lower body. If he really fainted from the suffocation, why is there a reaction down there?" Fanny's face was full of irritation as she spoke to Lisa with a red face. She then exerted force without further explanation and cursed lowly, pinching Han Shuo's body here and there. Han Shuo was immediately dumbfounded when he heard Fanny's words. His eyes continued to stare fixedly at the two's bodies as inspiration flashed through his mind. He didn't care if his logic was correct or not and immediately quibbled, "I was hit by the python's poisonous smoke just now and my entire body is stiff and powerless. My lower body is stiff as well, how can you blame me?" Fanny and Lisa looked at each other when these words were spoken and then suddenly realized that the other was still naked. They exclaimed in surprise and screeched loudly at the same time. "Shut up, don't quibble with me. I've never heard of anyone's lower body stiffening after being hit by the deepwater venom python's poisonous smoke. Well, close your eyes as well. Don't peek. Lisa, let's put on our clothes before we deal with him." Fanny yelled angrily and ran away with Lisa, shrieking. Han Shuo immediately shut his mouth. When the two of them turned around, a pair of shifty eyes suddenly opened, greedily lingering on Fanny's plump and perky buttocks. After a while, Fanny and Lisa, who were dressed neatly, walked over from afar with flushed cheeks. Fanny came over and sized up Han Shuo with a gloomy face. She snorted coldly and said, "Why is it such a coincidence that you would suddenly appear here?" "I came over to gather wood and happened to hear your cries for help. That's why I threw caution to the wind and came to your rescue." "Master Fanny, I'm injured, and I didn't mean to look at you. My entire body is stiff and I can't move. The python's tail whipped me from my chest to my right cheek and it hurts terribly. This was all to save you too." Han Shuo's face was bitter as he lay there facing the sky. His entire body was as stiff as a wooden puppet, and only his mouth and eyes seemed to be able to move. "Master Fanny, although Brian is indeed suspicious, he just saved our lives. Now that he's like this, why don't you let him go?" Lisa looked at Han Shuo from afar and rolled her eyes fiercely at Han Shuo when she saw that Han Shuo's lower body was still firmly erect. She spat lightly and turned her head to plead with Fanny. "Lisa, I was violated by him." Fanny glared at Han Shuo when she saw that Lisa was pleading for leniency and said a bit anxiously, "Only the three of us know about this. I won't say a word, and Brian definitely won't say a word. Just pretend it never happened. He also saw my body. Although I hate him, he just threw his life away for us. We can't just kill him." Lisa paused and thought for a moment before speaking to Fanny with a wry face. "I didn't see it, I didn't see anything just now. I promise, Master Fanny, please don't kill me to silence me." Han Shuo's face was full of panic as his eyes spun rapidly and he spat out a string of crazy words. "Shut up!" Fanny shouted angrily and then had a look of helplessness on her face. She thought left and right and stomped her foot fiercely, saying hatefully, "This won't end so quickly. I'll let you off today because you're injured, but I'll settle the score with you sooner or later. I haven't settled the score with you last time, but this time it's nothing." Fanny suddenly realized that she'd let the cat out of the bag again halfway through her words and hurriedly changed her words when she saw Lisa looking at her suspiciously again. Master Fanny, you wouldn't be? Lisa looked oddly at Fanny and opened her mouth to speak. No. Fanny immediately cut off Lisa's words fiercely and then explained softly with a sheepish smile, Brian kept making trouble during the last experiment. That's why I said I wanted to settle the score with him. Don't get the wrong idea, isn't that right, Brian? His eyes darting, Han Shuo hastily agreed. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Elisa, keep an eye on Brian. The python is already dead, I'll go extract the magical core from its body. It's a level 3 magical core this time. We'll be able to hold our heads high when we get back. Fanny didn't dare linger here for fear that she'd let the cat out of the bag again. She hurriedly ran away and swam towards the pool of water, but this time, Fanny didn't undress. After Fanny had left, Lisa, who had distanced herself from Han Shuo, moved closer to Han Shuo and sighed softly, saying lowly, Brian, I didn't think you'd be so stupid. I know that you risked your life to fight the python this time because of me. I only half believed what you said in the trap before, but after this incident, I truly believe you. Brian, I'm actually a bad girl, I'm not worth your sacrifice. Han Shuo. Lisa looked at Han Shuo's dazed expression, and because she'd hit right into Han Shuo's heart, she shook her head and gritted her teeth. Brian, you should give up now. We really aren't suited for each other. Because the difference in status between us is too great, my family will never allow us to interact. I'm sorry, Brian. Han Shuo. Brian, what's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything? Are you sad? Lisa still had a self-righteous look on her face, thinking that she'd played the role of a heartless person as she spoke frantically. Han Shuo didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he watched Lisa speak conceited words to herself. He really didn't know how to respond, and finally froze for a while before shouting out in pain, Don't say any more. Pausing for a moment, Han Shuo saw that Lisa seemed to have been scared silly and hurriedly sighed, saying with a distressed expression, I understand in my heart. I only need to watch you silently from afar and won't bring you any trouble. If you like someone, then you shouldn't be a burden to them. You should consider everything for them wholeheartedly. Lisa, don't worry about it, really don't. I'll take good care of myself and silently bless you. Han Shuo had heard these words from a few third-rate soap operas, and when Han Shuo said them in succession, even Han Shuo felt goosebumps all over his body. He felt that he really was a bit too sinister and shameless. I've never heard anyone say such nice words before, boo-hoo. I'm sorry, Brian. Contrary to Han Shuo's expectations, Lisa actually started sobbing softly when she heard Han Shuo's words. Her tears flowed endlessly, and it looked like she was incredibly touched. At this time, Fanny walked over from the pool in the distance, her body dripping wet. Fanny's expression changed when she heard Lisa's sobs and she glared fiercely at Han Shuo, pouting coquettishly, Brian, haven't you bullied us enough? Boo. Master Fanny, it's not about Brian, it's just that I'm a bit scared when I think about what happened just now. It has nothing to do with him, really. Lisa hurriedly wiped away her tears when she saw Fanny blame Han Shuo and forced a smile as she explained. She looked suspiciously at Lisa, and then looked at Han Shuo, who was lying there stiffly, seemingly not moving at all. Fanny snorted lightly and said, I doubt he'll dare bully you again. Fanny had walked out of the pool, her clothes clinging tightly to her perfect body. Although nothing could be seen, her exquisite curves were still a feast for Han Shuo's eyes. He clicked his tongue in admiration. Not only was Fanny beautiful, but her figure was of the first class to commit crimes. It's a bit odd. The python's neck to its head has already been charred. I wonder what's going on? It looks like the python's quick death isn't solely due to the effects of my magic, but the charred state of its brain is the key. However, my bone spear magic doesn't have the miraculous effect of burning a person's body from the inside out. Just what is going on, Brian? Fanny looked Han Shuo up and down and asked a bit oddly. Laughing dryly, Han Shuo hurriedly said, Who knows? I only stabbed it a few times. I don't have the magic or fighting aura that can burn its body from the inside out. It's no use looking at me. Is that really the case? Why do I feel that you're quite suspicious? Fanny frowned and her bright eyes looked Han Shuo up and down, full of suspicion. Think what you want. I'd love to have such miraculous magic and fighting aura, but I don't have the strength. Han Shuo laughed heartily and said with a bit of self-deprecation. The magical arts that he practiced weren't something that should exist in this world. This was a secret that would never be revealed to anyone, and this was something that Han Shuo would never admit even if he was beaten to death. Master Fanny, you must be thinking too much, or perhaps you've seen wrong. Your eyes really aren't that good sometimes. Brian just saved us. Why would he lie to us? Besides, if he was that strong, he wouldn't have needed to continue working as an errand slave a long time ago. Perhaps. Fanny smiled faintly and nodded, saying happily afterwards, we've obtained the magical beast core. Let's go, we can return to the tent. This swim was quite a close one, but we've really struck it rich with a third-level magical beast core. Brian, can you move now? Why don't I call one of the male students to carry you back? Lisa looked at Han Shuo and said worriedly. According to what I know, the deepwater venom python's poison mist will only temporarily paralyze the enemy and then make it easier for it to eat them. It's been so long, Brian, you should be fine by now, right? Fanny snorted angrily and rolled her eyes at Han Shuo, speaking with a cold face. Han Shuo cried out in surprise when he heard these words. Ah, it really is like that. I can completely move now. Let's go, let's hurry back? Lisa started and then looked suspiciously at Han Shuo. She also said with a bit of anger, Brian, you could move a long time ago? Without the slightest bit of awkwardness, Han Shuo explained seriously, No, I only knew that I could move after hearing Master Fanny say so. Let's go, let's go. If we delay any longer, they'll be sure to worry about us. Han Shuo abruptly stood up and didn't wait for Fanny and Lisa to ask any more questions after he'd spoken. He rushed quickly towards the tents where the students had set up camp. Damn it, he's been faking it all along. I found it out as soon as I tried. Brian, stop right there, I won't let you go. Fanny was exasperated as she yelled and pulled Lisa along, chasing after Han Shuo. Chapter 43. When Han Shuo whistled all the way to the tents where the students were camped, he suddenly noticed that Jean hadn't gone to sleep, but was instead sitting outside the tent, bored to death. Brian, have you seen Fanny and Lisa? Jean immediately stood up and asked when he heard Han Shuo's footsteps. Nodding, Han Shuo said faintly, I've seen them, Master Fanny and Lisa will be here soon. Master Jean, why haven't you gone to sleep yet? Oh, it's because Clark suddenly left for some business and asked me to apologize on behalf of Fanny. Huh, this Clark, he didn't give any reason and just left. It's a bit baffling. Han Shuo's thoughts raced when he heard Jean's words. He immediately understood that it must be because Clark's rash actions in the pool just now had angered Fanny and Lisa. Clark knew that he wouldn't be able to explain himself, so he left so abruptly. I see. Master Jean, I still need to gather a few things nearby. When Master Fanny and Lisa arrive, tell them I'll be back before dawn. Han Shuo didn't care if Jean agreed or not after he'd spoken and quickly headed south, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Although Han Shuo's body wasn't stiff and powerless, he had been whipped by the deepwater venom python's tail earlier and had indeed suffered some injuries. Han Shuo knew that when Fanny and Lisa returned, they would certainly come to pester him again. In this way, he wouldn't be able to use magical yuan to repair his body. Therefore, he might as well avoid them for now and wait until tomorrow, when the two's anger would have dissipated by at least half. At that time, there shouldn't be any problems. On a tall, towering tree in the south, Han Shuo sat cross-legged on a thick, lush and leafy branch about 10 meters above the ground. He held his breath and concentrated, silently using magical yuan to refine his body over and over again. Time flowed by without him realizing it. Han Shuo's body, which had originally been in slight pain, slowly became less painful under the circulation of the magical yuan. Every inch of his skin, flesh, tendons, and bones seemed to be filled with a surging strength. As Han Shuo sank into a state of concentration, A faint trace of pain first radiated from his mind and then spread to his entire body. The violent pain suddenly exploded, forcing Han Shuo to howl in pain with 10 times the intensity of the pain. Crackling sounds of explosions rang out from Han Shuo's body, accompanied by Han Shuo's agonized howls. As these sounds rang out, strands of weak, turbid air leaked out from Han Shuo's pores. Han Shuo's skin rippled as if a stone had been thrown into the water's surface. When the pores had finished draining the turbid air and harmful substances from his body, a hazy ball of black light began to faintly encircle his body. This state continued for an unknown length of time before Han Shuo felt the pain all over his body suddenly disappear without a trace. He flew down from the 10-meter-tall tree with a thud, his body terrifyingly nimble and nimble. Success! He had finally broken through the first level of magical yuan, the solid realm. From now on, Han Shuo's body could be said to have been reborn. Whether it was strength, flexibility, or toughness, they had all far surpassed that of an ordinary person. After passing the most basic, solid realm, Han Shuo's future training was bound to yield twice the results with half the effort. With a single thought, the magical yuan flowed unimpeded, not only to his limbs, chest, and abdomen, but even to his head. Han Shuo looked at his exposed skin and saw that the scars that had been left on his body had now disappeared. His flesh was smooth and strong. Moving his body, Han Shuo could clearly feel that his height had increased by another centimeter or two. Lifting his head to look at the sky, Han Shuo discovered that it was still late at night. At this moment, Han Shuo was intoxicated by the joy of being reborn. He continuously circulated the magical yuan to his limbs and bones, excitedly feeling every change in his body. Suddenly, a thought struck Han Shuo as he remembered the pouch and jade box that he always carried with him. Last time, he had used the strange object in the jade box to meditate on his mental strength. In the end, his mental strength had almost been completely sucked away. Afterwards, because the magical yuan had flowed into his brain, he had averted the danger and reaped a great harvest. Now that he had broken through to the solid realm, Han Shuo could already autonomously mobilize the magical yuan and circulate it to any part of his body, including the brain, which was the most difficult to reach. Thinking back to the enormous benefits he had previously reaped, Han Shuo could no longer suppress the desire in his heart. He immediately sat down cross-legged and took out the pouch that he had kept close to his body. When he opened the box, the eyeball-like orb was still as strange and unfathomable as ever. As Han Shuo's mental strength began to slowly condense into the orb, the same thing that had happened last time repeated itself. The orb instantly emitted a misty green brilliance, with a drop of blood red within, giving off an oppressive and uncomfortable feeling. Han Shuo's mental strength rapidly flowed into the orb in the jade box, as if a whale was sucking in water. As the mental strength in his brain continuously flowed out, the pain in Han Shuo's brain became more and more intense. Finally, just as Han Shuo felt that his brain was about to explode, his thoughts moved and the magical yuan that had sunk into his lower abdomen suddenly flew to his brain. A rumble sounded in Han Shuo's brain, and as the pain intensified, Han Shuo instantly let out a wretched howl. At the same time, the surging mental strength rolled back like an avalanche, flooding Han Shuo's brain in an instant. Han Shuo abruptly collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. His entire mind was a bit muddled. This state persisted for a while before Han Shuo slowly returned to normal. He felt that his mental strength had indeed greatly increased. In his joy, Han Shuo couldn't help but stare at the orb. Suddenly, Han Shuo saw threads of green light appear within the orb. These lights continuously intertwined with each other, as if a brush was sketching a picture. After a while, a pattern was revealed from within, a strange, grayish-brown castle. After the green line appeared for a moment, it suddenly disappeared without a trace. However, a bright red dot that resembled a drop of blood continuously flashed and formed the shape of a red arrow. After stopping for a moment, it actually pointed straight to the south. What did this mean? What did the direction of the red arrow mean? Han Shuo fell into a daze for a moment as he stared blankly at the red dot in the middle of the ball. His mind raced, and he finally confirmed one thing. The red arrow in the ball was pointing in a direction and seemed to be leading to a destination. After hesitating for a moment and looking at the color of the sky, Han Shua's curiosity was completely piqued. In the end, he grabbed the jade box and quickly headed south in the direction indicated by the jade box. During this process, Han Shua could clearly feel that the further south he went, the more sounds of large magical beasts moving could be heard. The path was filled with danger and thorns. Han Shua was a bit nervous, his eyes staring at the orb in his hand from time to time. He discovered that the arrow in the orb was constantly changing directions, as if pointing out the correct path for Han Shua. After a long while, the red arrowhead in the ball in Han Shua's hand disappeared, and the drop of dark red that was like fresh blood flashed once again. The green light of the ball grew stronger and stronger, and strong magical pulses emanated from within. Han Shua looked around after he stopped, and discovered that this was an ordinary area with tall, overgrown shrubs and weeds. There were a few enormous, unknown tree branches tangled together in the distance, drawing out grotesque shapes on the ground under the illumination of the moonlight, like the shadows of enormous monsters in the darkness. When Han Shua focused his attention, he suddenly noticed a trace of peculiarity. In other parts of the dark forest, no matter how quiet it was, there would always be the sounds of insects. However, after arriving here, Han Shua discovered that this area was almost deathly silent. There weren't any strange sounds from insects, and he couldn't feel a trace of life in the surroundings. Strange, under the ordinary appearance, the entire area made Han Shua feel traces of an inexplicable aura. This aura made Han Shua feel vaguely familiar and intimate, as if it was something he had long since gotten used to. But after thinking about it carefully, Han Shua realized that he had no idea what was going on. Just as Han Shua was at a loss and thinking hard, the orb in the jade box in his hand suddenly flew out of thin air. Lines of magic were outlined on the surface of the orb with green light. Han Shua could feel a strong magical pulse instantly emanating from the void. As the orb shone with the green light, the magical pulse became more and more intense. After paying attention, Han Shua suddenly noticed that the surrounding area where the green light shone was undergoing changes that made Han Shua's jaw drop. Where the green light shone on the ground, the weeds and shrubs on the ground instantly disappeared without a trace, turning into a grayish-brown dry ground with piles of white bones on the ground. Some of the towering trees with lush branches and leaves on the side also underwent strange changes under the illumination of the green light, turning into the skeletons of some large undead creatures. If Han Shua remembered correctly, those huge skeletons should be the most terrifying of the dark creatures, the bone dragons. A desolate and empty expanse. Under the illumination of the green light, the entire area seemed to have instantly turned into an eternal and unchanging kingdom of the dead. There was a huge grayish-brown castle in the middle. Half of it was suspended in midair, while the other half was buried deep underground. Some strange, sharp thorns circled around the castle, and patterns of dark creatures were carved on all sides of the castle walls. Han Shua looked at it in shock for a long time, and finally murmured in horror, This can't be the legendary cemetery of death, can it? Chapter 44. The Cemetery of Death was the legendary holy land of necromancers, and also the extravagant hope of everyone on this trip to the dark forest. Han Shua surveyed his surroundings and connected the dots to Fanny's description from before. He was already certain that this place was the Cemetery of Death that had been transported. No wonder Han Shua had felt a vague sense of familiarity when he was here just now. This was all because Han Shua had also trained in necromancy magic. There were strong magical pulses of the air of death in this area, as well as the scent of bones that had been transformed. These were all things that Han Shua was extremely familiar with. Han Shua furrowed his brow as he stared closely at the entire area. He thought to himself that those who had seen the Cemetery of Death in the legends would all die in the end. Now that he was standing here, should he go in or not? The Cemetery of Death had been a place where powerful necromancers had researched necromancy magic during their golden age. Afterwards, these mages had all died, and the Cemetery of Death had also disappeared without a trace. However, since this cemetery of death had once been a place where necromancers had researched, there must be some secrets of necromancy magic here. This was an enormous temptation for a rookie like Han Shuo who had just entered the halls of magic. Han Shuo had no choice but to seriously consider whether or not he needed to take the risk. After a while, Han Shuo's expression was resolute as he started to walk over the eerie white bones towards the cemetery of death. After Han Shuo had walked a few steps and entered the depths of the area, the dark green ball that had been suspended high in the air suddenly fell back into the jade box. The green light in the entire area instantly disappeared without a trace. Han Shuo started and looked around in shock. He discovered that the scene in the surrounding area that Han Shuo's eyes were looking at had once again changed, returning to the scene that he had seen when he had first arrived. However, the surrounding area of the cemetery of death, all the way to the soles of Han Shuo's feet, was still a gloomy scene of death. Looking at the round ball in his hand, Han Shuo understood that this ball was definitely a crucial item in the cemetery of death. It seemed to have the ability to open the cemetery of death. The entire cemetery of death seemed to be shrouded in a concealment barrier. If one looked at this area from the outside, they wouldn't be able to detect anything strange or peculiar. It wouldn't be able to attract anyone's attention. However, with this sphere, the true side of the cemetery of death could be revealed, and the entire cemetery of death would be shrouded in the desolate silence of reality. The eerie white bones beneath his feet creaked as he walked. The sudden appearance of this kind of sound in the deathly stillness of the surroundings made Han Shuo's hair stand on end. It was a good thing that Han Shuo's magical arts had just broken through to the solid realm. Only then did he have the courage to walk towards the cemetery of death without any hesitation. After a while, Han Shuo finally stood in front of the cemetery of death. He saw that there was a ring-shaped ravine in front of the door, with ink-black water flowing in it. A small bridge made of black threads and white bones stood alone on top of the ravine. Without hesitation, Han Shuo clutched the jade box with the round ball in his hand and treaded on the bone bridge, slowly walking towards the entrance of the cemetery of death. The bone bridge was swaying, causing Han Shuo's body to become a bit unsteady. He didn't know what was in the ravine below, but Han Shuo felt his hair stand on end when he saw it. He kept feeling that the ink-black water in the ravine was very dangerous. When Han Shuo walked onto the bone bridge, the round ball in the jade box started to emit a strange green light again. This seemed to be some kind of miraculous medicine that could calm the swaying. After the green light emitted from the round ball, the originally swaying bone bridge strangely stopped swaying. The connection between the black threads and the bones seemed to instantly become incomparably sturdy. Finally, Han Shuo arrived at the entrance. In front of the two large grayish-brown doors made of an unknown material, there were two tall evil knights and the skeletal remains of a warhorse on each side. Evil knights were extremely powerful existences among dark creatures. Without an archmage-level necromancer, one shouldn't even think of summoning evil knights. From the skeletal remains of the two evil knights in front of the door and the shape of the warhorses, Han Shuo could already faintly tell that these two evil knights were the cream of the crop. The two grayish-brown doors had some complicated magical patterns on them. There was a circular groove at the intersection of the two doors. Judging from the shape of the groove, it seemed to be the key to open the door. At this moment, the dark green round ball in Han Shuo's hand suddenly shot out a beam of green light that went straight to the circular groove in the middle of the two doors. Han Shuo's heart moved and he immediately understood what was going on. He took the jade box without hesitation and placed the round ball against the groove, slowly embedding it. During this process, Han Shuo didn't touch the round ball with his hands. This was because Han Shuo knew that this round ball wasn't something simple. Even Han Shuo didn't know if there would be any negative changes if his skin or flesh came into contact with it. Therefore, he avoided touching it as much as possible. After the round ball had embedded itself into the groove, a rumbling sound rang out and the door suddenly split open with a creak. The groove automatically split apart as the door opened. The round ball that had originally been inserted remained in the jade box without any changes. It was a patch of dusky darkness. Dust flew out from the inside as the door opened, causing Han Shuo to cough a few times before he calmed his mind and began to size up everything within. There was a large hall within the Cemetery of Death, and there were 6 rooms with closed doors around it. The entire hall was incomparably vast, with an oddly high ceiling that was the size of a basketball court. There was an enormous hexagram magic matrix in the middle that was about 80 to 90% similar to the one that Han Shuo had ridden in Zajowski City and the Academy of Magic and Force. There were a few simple and unadorned magical patterns drawn in the center of the hexagram magic matrix. Apart from the hexagram magic matrix, the surroundings of the hall were empty. There were only a few magic stone pillars that supported the enormous building, as well as some broken bones in the corners. There was a thick smell of decay in the air. Han Shuo stood in the doorway for a while and only slowly walked in after he felt the smell of decay slowly spread out with the opening of the door. Apart from the hexagram magic matrix, there was a tall ceiling and the 6 rooms with closed doors corresponding to the 6 corners of the hexagram. He walked in and searched the hall, but didn't find anything of value. Han Shuo immediately focused his attention on the 6 rooms with half-closed doors. 1, 2, 3. After searching all 6 rooms, Han Shuo still didn't find anything. From the shape of the 6 rooms, he could tell that they were only 6 warehouses, but there was nothing in the warehouses. Han Shuo's mind started to recall after he returned to the hall. From Fanny's words from last time to his observations of the outside, Han Shuo gradually recalled that only a small part of the Cemetery of Death was exposed to the surface. The majority of it was buried deep underground. The true secret must be hidden beneath the Cemetery of Death. However, after Han Shuo searched the entire hall and the 6 rooms, he didn't find any passageways or stairs that led underground. This greatly puzzled Han Shuo, and he sank into deep thought for a moment. After thinking for a long time, Han Shuo still felt that the ball in his hand was the key. He immediately stood up and circled the entire hall, including the 6 rooms. Finally, in the corner of one of the rooms, Han Shuo found another notch. After Han Shuo was overjoyed, he put the ball in. There was a rumbling sound, and the wall of the room suddenly tore open to reveal a dark passageway. On the first step of the passageway, there were 6 shiny silver rods made of a strange material that was neither stone nor wood. The 2 corners of each rod seemed to have joints, as if the 6 rods could be pieced together. Apart from the 6 rods, there was only a thin piece of paper with some scribbled words written in ancient magical characters. Han Shuo held the thin piece of paper. After reading the magical characters carefully, Han Shuo understood that the 6 magical rods could be pieced together to form a hexagram and could be used to teleport directly to the magical formation in the hall. He also understood that there was a boundary at the entrance of the passageway and that one wouldn't be able to enter without sufficient mental strength. Apart from this, Han Shuo didn't obtain any other useful information from the thin piece of paper. After thinking for a moment, Han Shuo put away the 6 magical rods and started to walk down the passageway with a frown. A layer of invisible boundaries suddenly appeared, and a green ripple flashed, abruptly sending Han Shuo flying. Han Shuo felt an abnormal headache during this process, and thought to himself that the words on the thin piece of paper were true. It must be because his mental strength was too weak that he couldn't enter the passageway to reach the underground building. Cursing under his breath, Han Shuo connected the 6 magical rods according to the records on the thin piece of paper and then formed a hexagram on the ground. Afterwards, Han Shuo stood in the middle of the miniature magical formation and infused his mental strength to activate it. Soon after, a white light flashed, and Han Shuo appeared in the middle of the spacious magical formation in the hall. Using the same method, Han Shuo infused his mental strength into the teleportation formation in the hall, and after activating it, he returned to the previous room, where he set up the miniature hexagram magical formation. Frowning and thinking for a moment, Han Shuo understood that he wouldn't be able to enter the passageway to investigate the situation within the Cemetery of Death for the time being. It was a good thing that he had obtained the 6 magical rods and the round ball, which allowed Han Shuo to enter this place from anywhere with great ease. This made Han Shuo extremely happy, and he was already treating this place as his secret base. Since he was temporarily unable to uncover the secrets of this place, Han Shuo didn't plan on staying any longer. After thinking for a while, he rolled up the 6 magical rods and carried them on his back. He also put the thin piece of paper into his pocket and walked out of the cemetery of death with the jade box in his hand. When Han Shuo walked out safely and looked back, he discovered that the scene was exactly the same as when he'd first arrived. The towering weeds and shrubs, the lush trees that reached the sky, were still the same, and the surroundings were still deathly silent. With a satisfied smile on his face, Han Shuo understood that this trip to the dark forest could be considered to have come to an end for now. He had also discovered the legendary cemetery of death by sheer luck. The secrets of the cemetery of death would belong to him and no one else, including the necromancy students and teachers. Chapter 45. After exiting the cemetery of death, Han Shuo retraced his steps back. However, the sky was already completely bright by the time he reached the halfway point. When Han Shuo arrived at his original encampment according to his memories, he discovered that the necromancy students had long since left. Just as Han Shuo was about to curse out loud, he abruptly took note of his surroundings. He discovered that the traces of charcoal in the place where the bonfire had been kept didn't seem to be from last night, but rather from a few days later. There had been many resources stored in Han Shuo's tent, but there was nothing left now. There were only a few stones piled up next to it, forming a triangle. His thoughts raced. Han Shuo quickly walked to the tent and took out a dagger. He carefully fiddled with the stones and picked out a piece of yellow paper after a while. "Brian, we discovered traces of the 2 ogres in the vicinity the day after you left. We didn't wait for you because we were afraid that the ogres would come back for revenge. After you read this note, return to the academy on your own. Perhaps we'll meet on the way. I hope you're safe and sound. Fanny." The note had been left behind by Fanny. Han Shuo slapped his head after reading it and cursed inwardly. After reading this note, Han Shuo finally understood that a long time must have passed unknowingly when he'd been training his magical yuan. It definitely hadn't been just a day. It looked like the appearance of the 2 ogres had caused Fanny and the others to panic. Add to that the fact that they were deep south of the dark forest, and without Clark's protection, they had no choice but to return the way they'd come. Up until now, Han Shuo's status as a slave hadn't been removed, and the woman Han Shuo wanted was still within the academy, as well as some necromancy books. Han Shuo wouldn't be able to leave the academy in the near future. With the 6 magic wands in hand, Han Shuo could enter and exit the cemetery of death at will. When he returned to the academy, Han Shuo could use the transportation matrix to make the cemetery of death his personal territory. He could use the entire southern part of the dark forest as a training ground in the future. Whether it was magical yuan or magical yuan training, it would yield twice the results with half the effort in such a place. After a moment's thought, Han Shuo quickly ran out of the dark forest according to Fanny's instructions on the note. After a day of non-stop travel, Han Shuo didn't feel the slightest bit tired. He weaved through the uneven paths of the dark forest. Han Shuo's speed was as fast as lightning, as swift as a magical beast chasing its prey. Han Shuo arrived at a place overgrown with rocks at dusk. Han Shuo's group had camped here once before. Before Han Shuo could approach this place, the sounds of metal clashing could be heard from afar. Han Shuo's heart jumped. Could it be that Fanny and the others were being attacked by the ogres? When his thoughts traveled here, Han Shuo's speed abruptly increased as he flew towards the area overgrown with rocks. Along the way, he encountered many forest troll with oily green skin, wielding knives, forks, and clubs. They continuously attacked Han Shuo, but Han Shuo easily dodged all of them. The forest troll was a race within the dark forest. This race was the mortal enemy of the elves, and had always been suppressed by the elves. Within the dark forest, the forest troll were even more frightening bandits than the ogres. Not only were they strictly disciplined, but they imitated the way humans use troops. They were divided into forest troll warriors, forest troll hunters, and forest troll priests who could use some simple magic. Legend had it that the forest troll had evolved from plants and trees. Like humans, they possessed high intelligence. Within the forest, The forest troll had a few unique advantages. They used these advantages to wantonly plunder the resources of other races within the forest, including the goods of some traveling merchants. They were as notorious as the ogres for being bandits. Han Shuo listened carefully to the sounds of battle and quickly dashed forward according to the direction the sounds were coming from. As he sprinted, several long spears were thrown out by the forest troll hunters, whistling towards Han Shuo's back. Han Shuo's 5 senses were exceedingly sensitive as he sprinted. His ears twitched as his body repeatedly changed directions, easily dodging the long spears. A few troll warriors wielded large, sharp axes in their hands and shouted loudly as they rushed towards Han Shuo from the side. However, before they'd even gotten close to Han Shuo had already nimbly dashed past them and continued running towards the center of the battle. After tens of seconds of sprinting, Han Shuo finally arrived at the center of the battle. He saw a line of a dozen or so people wielding longswords, defending against the attacks of the forest troll. The clothing of these dozen or so people clearly belonged to a certain mercenary group. Every one of them was riddled with scars, and it looked like they'd all sustained some sort of injury. There were dozens of forest trolls surrounding them. The troll warriors at the front were engaging in close combat, while the dozen or so troll hunters behind them continuously threw long spears and javelins. The last 5 forest troll priests were releasing simple healing magic and fire of the soul that strengthened the body, healing the injuries of the troll warriors and troll hunters and increasing their physical strength. Looking at the situation, the battle had already been going on for a while. The dozen or so human mercenaries had extraordinary combat abilities, but it was a pity that the forest troll had more people. There were also the troll hunters who threw long-range weapons, and the troll priests who healed and restored physical strength. These 3 combined to deal with the mercenaries that only consisted of warriors, and with their advantage in numbers, they obviously had the absolute advantage. Behind the mercenaries was a short, stocky fatty with a face full of fat. He cursed loudly as his bean-like eyes darted back and forth, as if searching for a way to escape. So it wasn't Fanny and the others. It looked like this had nothing to do with him. Han Shuo thought for a bit and immediately ignored the situation here. He didn't have any thoughts of drawing his sword and helping out, and directly planned on passing these people and continuing on his way out of the dark forest. Except, although Han Shuo didn't have any thoughts of helping out, the forest troll didn't seem to want to let Han Shuo go. A few particularly valiant troll warriors at the front had already raised their enormous battle axes and rushed towards Han Shuo, throwing a few sharp javelins as well. My apologies, I'm just passing by and will leave immediately. You guys continue to steal from them, it has nothing to do with me. When he saw the troll warriors rush over, Han Shuo didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. He suddenly called out loudly, planning on avoiding them and leaving. Humans are the most cunning and evil of all races. Kill him. The troll leader of the operation suddenly yelled out harshly in the common language of the continent, human language, next to the troll priests on the perimeter. The troll warriors who'd been momentarily stunned by Han Shuo's words no longer hesitated when they heard their leader's orders. They raised their battle axes and rushed over. F***ck, they're asking for it. Han Shuo was also a little angry. He just dodged a few spears when he saw the tall troll warriors rush over with battle axes. It was obvious that they were planning on taking care of him as well. Grabbing a spear beside him, Han Shuo exerted force and grabbed the spear in his hand. Without waiting for the troll warriors to approach him, Han Shuo had already flown up. The spear in his hand was as fast as lightning streaking through the air. There was a soft poochie sound as the spear pierced through the chest of the first troll warrior. It even nailed the troll warrior that was nearer to him. The 2 troll warriors only had time to let out 2 miserable howls before they were pierced by the spear and died instantly. Casually grabbing the battle axe in the hands of one of the troll warriors, Han Shuo yelled out, "If you're asking for it, then don't blame me." After experiencing the incident with the ogres last time, Han Shuo no longer had the slightest bit of timidity when it came to killing people. There was even a faint, inexplicable sense of excitement. Towards these bandits and villains, Han Shuo knew that kindness and begging for mercy were of no use. Only cruel and callous methods would be able to intimidate them. The more timid and weak you were, the more they wouldn't have any scruples. Thus, this time, Han Shua's actions were extremely vicious, and he faced them with ruthless slaughter. Indeed, after Han Shua's cruel methods were used, the other 4 troll warriors that had surrounded him revealed panicked expressions on their oily green faces. At the same time, they timidly took a few steps back. The forest troll leader looked at Han Shua with a bit of fear in his eyes, and a hesitant expression appeared on his face. "Brave warrior, I beg you to save me." It was at this moment that the short fatty that had been blocked by the mercenaries suddenly yelled out in excitement. He looked at Han Shua with a fiery expression, as if Han Shua was his savior. Not interested. Han Shua flatly refused. He picked up the battle axe in his hands and planned to leave after a cold snort. When the short fatty saw that Han Shua was about to leave, he immediately paled in fright and yelled out in a panic, "Brave warrior, if you can save me, I'm willing to pay handsomely and guarantee that you'll be satisfied." Han Shua had already taken a few steps when these words were spoken. He suddenly stopped and turned to look at the fatty with a smile. "Honorable sir, how much are you willing to pay?" The fatty started and then hesitated for a moment. He clenched his teeth and stomped his feet, yelling out, 50 gold coins. "I'm sorry, you should find someone else." Han Shua thought to himself, if it was before, he might have really been tempted by 50 gold coins. But now that he'd entered the dark forest, Han Shua had discovered that he was completely capable of capturing the Windblade wolves on his own. He no longer felt that 50 gold coins was worth the risk. When he saw that Han Shua was about to leave, the fatty panicked and yelled out again, 70 at most. Han Shua didn't even turn his head back as he continued walking forward. 80, 100, 120, 150, 200, 200. Han Shua's walking body abruptly stopped as he suddenly turned around and quickly rushed back. He opened his mouth and said, "All right, 200 it is then. Count it as me taking a bit of a loss and making friends is fine." "Oh my gosh, 200 gold coins? You're robbing like them. 200 gold coins can buy dozens of slaves. Damn it, hurry up and save me." The fatty yelled with a pained expression. Chapter 46. When Han Shua arrived at the fatty's side, he noticed that the strongest of the dozen or so mercenaries behind the fatty were 2 journeyman warriors, followed by 6 beginner warriors, and a few trainee warriors. These people were all riddled with wounds, and the 2 strongest journeyman warriors had the most serious injuries. They'd almost lost all ability to fight by now. "Mr. Fabian, we're the ones who are protecting you." The journeyman warrior, who had a bloody hole in his ribs and was still dripping with fresh blood, couldn't help but reveal an anxious expression when he saw Han Shua swiftly approach. He spoke to the short, stocky fatty. "The situation now is quite obvious. You've already lost all ability to fight and are unable to provide effective protection for me. I've already paid half of the gold coins to your mercenary band before, but because you haven't been able to safely escort me back to the Empire, I won't be paying the remaining half." Fabian spoke with a face full of resignation, and then a genial smile hung on his face. He bowed to Han Shua and said, "Brave warrior, please take me away from here. I'll pay you 200 gold coins." "All right, give me 100 gold coins first, and I'll start immediately." Han Shua was unperturbed and also smiled as he spoke. At this moment, the troll leader saw that Han Shua didn't seem to have any intentions of leaving. He finally roared out in fury, "Crafty, evil human, kill them all." The troll warriors, hunters, and priests, who had been standing there blankly a moment ago, once again yelled out a few strange words in the forest troll's language as soon as the troll leader's words had sounded. "All right, here's 100 gold coins. I'll give you another 100 gold coins when you take me away safely from here." "Damn it, they're already charging over, you better hurry up and move." Fabian hastily took out a money pouch and poured out 100 gold coins, handing it to Han Shua as he watched the forest troll charge over with a sinister expression and a weapon in his hand. As soon as the 100 gold coins were in his hands, Han Shua suddenly smiled and rushed towards Fabian. Before Fabian could react, Han Shuo had already carried him on his back and pulled out a few strips of gauze from an open pocket on the side, tightly wrapping them around Fabian's back without any explanation. "Let's go. I'll bring you out of here safely. You must hold on tight to me. Don't blame me if you fall off on your own," Han Shuo hurriedly ordered. He threw away the battle axe in his hand and grabbed a spear from the side. Then he suddenly rushed towards the periphery. 7 troll warriors had long since blocked the way. Behind them were some troll hunters and 2 troll priests. As soon as they saw Han Shuo rush over, their spears and javelins had already been thrown out, whistling towards Han Shuo. Even with a fatty on his back, Han Shuo still seemed very relaxed as he maneuvered through the rugged path. Nimbly changing directions, Han Shuo easily dodged a few spears and javelins. When Han Shuo had rushed to the side of the 7 troll warriors, the troll warriors, who had been waiting for a long time, rushed over with large strides, wielding their battle axes. Tightly gripping a spear in his hand, Han Shuo's body swiftly closed in, the spear stabbing towards the chest of the first troll warrior. A flower of blood suddenly blossomed on his chest as the troll warrior's body trembled and fell backwards. At this moment, the troll priests in the back started chanting healing and fire of the soul magic. Several streaks of green light were cast onto the troll warriors. The troll warrior that had fallen earlier stood up shakily. After the other troll warriors had been covered by the magic of the fire of the soul, their originally hard green skin seemed to have been coated with a layer of iron. It actually flashed with a kind of metallic luster. Then their speed and strength increased at the same time, and they rushed over with loud roars. Hurry up and get me out of here." Fabian was pale with fright as he cried out frantically on Han Shuo's back. The expression on his face didn't change as Han Shuo turned a deaf ear to Fabian's screams. The spear in his hand was suddenly thrown out, piercing the troll warrior that had shakily stood up through the neck and nailing him to the ground. He then pulled out the spears and javelins that had been stabbed into the ground and threw them one by one at the priests hiding in the back. A troll priest couldn't dodge in time and was pierced to death on the spot by the javelins. 2 other troll hunters were also pierced through the chest and died. At this moment, Han Shuo casually pulled out a spear and began to fend off the troll warriors that had already arrived in front of him. The fire of the soul magic had been cast on the troll warriors, and all of their bodily functions had received an upgrade. However, Han Shuo's magical training had been somewhat successful, and the toughness and agility of his body still far exceeded theirs. As he danced with his spear, he flicked the battle axes into the air. During this process, the troll warriors would also pull out the javelins and spears that had been stabbed into the ground after their battle axes had slipped and flown out of their hands, firmly blocking the way as they tangled with Han Shuo. With a fatty on his back, Han Shuo was fighting 1 against 6. Even though he was able to dodge very quickly, he still couldn't completely deflect all of the damage. Whenever danger approached, Han Shuo would very evilly use Fabian on his back as a shield, using Fabian's fat body to minimize the damage on his own body. "Damn it, you can't do this. Otherwise, don't even think about getting the next 100 gold coins." Fabian's butt had been pierced by a spear, and a few bloody wounds had also appeared on his back from the javelins. He continuously cried out in panic on Han Shuo's back. It was a pity that Han Shuo had already completely ignored Fabian's complaints. He pulled out the spear that had been stabbed into the chest of a troll warrior, and fresh blood suddenly sprayed out, spraying all over Han Shuo's body. Han Shuo's expression was already sinister and severe to begin with, and he looked even more like the reincarnation of the Grim Reaper after being sprayed with fresh blood. Fabian, on the other hand, immediately froze in shock and didn't dare say anything else. He only sobbed on Han Shuo's back. Kill him, let's go together." When the troll leader saw that Han Shuo had killed quite a few forest troll in a row, he suddenly roared in rage. Even he himself raised a battle axe and rushed over from behind. Now, Han Shuo was fighting 1 against 5. Although it didn't seem particularly strenuous for him, it was still very difficult for him to charge out of the encirclement of the 5. When the troll leader's words fell and more troll warriors rushed over, Han Shuo dodged the attack of a battle axe and took a few steps back. fallen warriors of the dead, heed the Dark Herald's call and reveal your existence. Han Shuo suddenly chanted the undead summoning incantation as he spread his hands. Oh my gosh, you're actually a mage as well. Fabian, who had been sobbing softly, was instantly dumbfounded when he saw that Han Shuo had actually chanted a magical incantation. He looked at Han Shuo with a confused expression and let out a strange cry. The troll leader in the distance was also shocked, and then rushed over even faster, roaring loudly, "Kill him, hurry and kill him." The little skull wielding the bone dagger suddenly appeared in front of Han Shuo. Its thin and small body stood there all by itself, and its empty eyes scanned the surroundings blankly. No way, why is it just a little skull, and such a skinny one at that? What's the use of this? Fabian couldn't help but cry out in alarm when he saw that Han Shuo had only summoned a skeleton. Wah, so it's just a skeleton. That gave me a fright, kill them. When the troll leader realized that it was just a little skull after his initial shock, he immediately started jeering and ordering the forest troll warriors to quickly approach. Han Shuo's eyes were cold, and the corners of his mouth also curved into a mocking smile. He immediately gave the little skull the order to attack as soon as the troll leader's words fell. When the little skull received Han Shuo's order to attack, its calf bones bent and straightened, and it suddenly shot out like a sharp sword. The bone dagger in its hand drew a dark streak of light through the air, flying out first. With a puchi, the troll warrior that had rushed over first was directly pierced through the forehead by the bone dagger like a piece of paper, and fell backwards stiffly. The little skull didn't stop after it pierced through the skull of a troll warrior. It whistled through the air under the control of the little skull, as if it were a ghost seeking death. It made an ear-splitting howl as it moved in a mysterious and unpredictable arc, piercing through two troll warriors in a row. When the little skull neared these troll warriors, it automatically returned to the little skull's hand. The moment the bone dagger left his hand, 3 troll warriors had lost their lives in the blink of an eye. After the little skull's attack, the extremely disappointed Fabian and the loudly mocking troll leader were both dumbfounded. They stared closely at the little skull, who was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, in disbelief. The little skull grasped the bone dagger in his hand and nimbly began to reap the lives of the troll warriors. Oh my gosh, am I seeing things? Is this really just a skeletal warrior? Fabian finally reacted and screamed in excitement. If it wasn't for the gauze wrapping around him, he might have fallen to the ground from the excitement. Don't go near him. Everyone, stay away from that skeleton. Use spears, javelins, and battle axes to kill that little skull. After the shock, the troll leader commanded loudly with a face full of fear. His originally approaching body stopped abruptly and he began to retreat timidly. The troll warriors that were still close to the little skull all retreated. As soon as they left, the sky full of spears, javelins, and battle axes of the troll warriors flew out at the same time, smashing and stabbing towards the little skull. Han Shuo was startled and thought that no matter how strong the little skull was, he would probably be hit by such a fierce barrage of attacks. It would be too late even if he chanted the incantation to withdraw the dagger now. Han Shuo was secretly anxious and began to truly worry for the little skull. However, the little skull's unimaginably flashy performance completely overturned Han Shuo's knowledge and understanding of him. Chapter 47. At this moment, the 7 bone spurs on Little Skull's back suddenly swayed with a creaking sound. When the sky full of javelins, spears, and axes were about to fall on Little Skull's body, the 7 bone spurs instantly detached from Little Skull's back and spiraled out, whistling as they intertwined and spun above Little Skull's head. Little Skull stood where he was, holding the bone dagger in his hand. His little body danced as if he was having an epileptic fit. Under Little Skull's control, the 7 bone spurs drew mysterious arcs in the air as if they were being waved by invisible hands. Pa-pa-pa, sounds rang out continuously. The flying javelins, spears, and axes were all broken by the crisscrossing 7 bone spurs. None of them could get close to Little Skull's small body. Han Shuo pinched his own waist. After feeling the pain, he realized how real this moment was. Not only could the little skeleton wield the bone dagger in battle, but he'd also been able to wield the 7 bone spurs on his back, turning them into terrifying weapons that could claim lives. This made Han Shuo feel that the little skeleton at this moment was inconceivable. The method of demon control was a demonic cultivation method that allowed one to control demonic treasures to attack. The last time Han Shuo had inexplicably transferred those memories to the little skeleton, he'd seen the little skeleton control the bone dagger and fly. This was already enough to astonish Han Shuo. But now, the fact that Little Skull could even control the 7 bone spurs on his back had completely shocked Han Shuo. In order to use the method of demon control, apart from understanding the method of demon control, one also needed to have a demonic treasure that was connected to one's life. Only when one's mind and spirit were connected to the demonic treasure would one be able to use it naturally. It looked like the 7 bone spurs and bone dagger had unknowingly become Little Skull's personal demonic treasures under the continuous forging of magical yuan. Without a demonic treasure in hand, Han Shuo still couldn't use the method of demon control. Who would have thought that the Little Skull, a dark creature, had already walked ahead of Han Shuo and successfully activated it first? Oh my gosh! What kind of monster is this Little Skull? Fabian moaned in excitement and nervousness, exclaiming in a low, dumbfounded voice. The forest trolls were also completely dumbfounded after the javelins, pikes, and battle axes that had been flying towards them had all been smashed to pieces. The 7 bone spurs that had been circling around the little skeleton abruptly shot out in all directions, piercing through the 7 forest trolls that were standing there dumbly. Demon, this is a demon with a skeleton body, run. An extremely panicked scream suddenly came out of a forest troll's mouth. This seemed to be a signal to retreat. When the forest trolls heard this, they all began to flee for their lives in all directions like stray dogs. Even the forest troll leader from before didn't utter a single word as he fled without a care in which direction he went. The development of a situation was always so unexpected. Han Shuo, who had only planned on breaking through the encirclement and escaping, hadn't expected that the 7 bone spurs of Little Skull would have such terrifying power. By the time Han Shuo had come to his senses, apart from a dozen or so forest troll corpses, there wasn't a single living forest troll left. Wah, good boy, good boy. Han Shuo suddenly felt a sense of relief and couldn't help but laugh wildly. At the same time, the 7 bone spurs circled once in the air and accurately returned to the Little Skull's back. Little Skull then bent his legs and raised the bone dagger in his hand, starting to loot the first forest troll's corpse with practiced ease, taking away everything apart from the clothes on their bodies. Give it to me, the other 100 gold coins. Putting Fabian down, Han Shuo had a faint smile on his face as he asked for the rest of the reward from the dumbfounded Fabian. At this moment, Fabian's gaze was still roving over the Little Skull's body, and he only reacted when Han Shuo's voice sounded. Fabian was about to take out the gold coins when he suddenly thought of something and glared at Han Shuo. No way. You used me as a shield when you were fighting the forest troll just now. Your actions have completely harmed your employer's interests, and you still want the other 100 gold coins? Han Shuo's face instantly grew cold as his cold gaze roved over Fabian's body. He casually pulled out a javelin beside him and said faintly, Mr. Fabian, are you trying to renege on your debt? On the other side, the Little Skull, who was collecting the spoils of war, also suddenly stopped and looked at Fabian with its empty eye sockets. Fabian suddenly felt a chill run down his spine and his heart trembled. He hastily squeezed out a smile and backed up a few steps, saying, Just kidding, just kidding. Here's 100 gold coins. Not a single one less. Thank you for your hard work. Putting away the 100 gold coins, Han Shuo gave a faint and didn't waste any more words. A carefree feeling rose in his heart as he thought to himself that he was indeed successful in every endeavor when he had unyielding strength. Honorable warrior, the items on those forest trolls' bodies, mine, they're all mine. Han Shuo had already cut off Fabian's words before he'd even finished speaking, taking those items as his spoils of war as a matter of course. Forcing out an awkward laugh, Fabian said repeatedly, Of course, they're all yours. What I meant was that I can buy the items that were looted from the forest trolls' bodies. Creasing his brow, Han Shuo looked suspiciously at Fabian and then hung a smile on his face again. He mimicked Clark and bowed courteously, saying, "Mr. Fabian means that you plan on using gold coins to buy these items?" This face sure changes quickly. Fabian cursed inwardly and nodded with a similar smile on his face. "Indeed, I'm a merchant. I enter and exit the Dark Forest in order to purchase some items from the Dark Forest and then bring them back to the Empire for profit. The forest troll are notorious bandits in the Dark Forest. They should have some things that I need on their bodies. If you don't mind, warrior, I plan on buying them." At this moment, the little skull silently walked to Han Shuo's side with 8 bags hanging from his 2 hand bones. Under Han Shuo's orders, the little skull put down the 8 bags and used the bone dagger in his hand to open them one by one. Han Shuo also placed the items from his journey on the ground and looked at Fabian, awaiting his valuation. 8 magicite cores of magical beasts of the 5th rank, 6 of the 4th rank, and 1 of the 3rd rank. 3 windblade wolf pelts, 3 venomous lizard fangs, 1 young deepwater venom python egg, and 5 stalks of moon feeder grass. I can pay you 1,000 gold coins for all of these, how about it? Fabian silently calculated after categorizing these items and lifted his head to smile at Han Shuo. Shaking his head, Han Shuo said sarcastically, "Not much. The deepwater venom python is a level 3 magical creature. Just one of its eggs should be worth quite a bit, not to mention the core of a level 3 magical creature. Do you think I'm an idiot by only offering 1,000 gold coins?" Han Shuo knew that the price of a level 3 magical creature wouldn't be low. Because he didn't know the exact price, Han Shuo hadn't clearly stated the exact number of gold coins. However, it was inevitable that the merchant's asking price would be far lower than the market price. Therefore, Han Shuo naturally wouldn't let him take it so easily. The deepwater venom python is a level 3 magical creature, but the chances of nurturing a deepwater venom python from its egg are pitifully small, and it might not even recognize its master. Therefore, the price can't be too high. How about this? I'll offer 1,500 gold coins, what do you think? Han Shuo didn't say anything and only looked at Fabian with a slight smile. 2,000 gold coins, that's my bottom line. If you really aren't willing to sell, then forget it. I'll leave right now. Fabian gritted his teeth and finally raised the price by another 500 gold coins. Seeing that it was about right, Han Shuo chuckled lightly and said faintly, 2,000 it is. The items are yours now. Where are the gold coins? These items would definitely be worth more than this if they were brought to the Empire. However, Han Shuo was still in the Dark Forest right now and didn't have a space ring. It wouldn't be convenient to bring these items with him. In addition, Han Shuo's identity was only an errant slave of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. It would be difficult to deal with him once he arrived in the Empire. It would be more convenient and direct to hand it over to Fabian. This is a crystal card with 2,000 gold coins on it. Take this crystal card and you can exchange it for gold coins at any savings merchant. Oh right, what's your name? I can help you print your name onto the crystal card. Fabian took out a thin golden crystal card and asked Han Shuo. Brian. Oh alright, Brian. After Fabian took out the crystal card, he also took out something that looked like a thin needle and lightly drew it across a thin slit in the corner of the crystal card. A faint golden light flickered and the crystal card returned to normal. Han Shuo had been in this world for a period of time. After purposefully understanding this world, he understood that crystal cards were like the bank cards of his original world. Gold, silver, and copper coins were all items with weight. No one could carry thousands upon thousands of gold coins on their person. This kind of crystal card was a necessity for nobles. It could be used to store and withdraw gold coins from the ubiquitous savings merchants of the Empire. Here you go, Brian. From now on, this crystal card is yours. Fabian smiled faintly after handing the crystal card to Han Shuo. He looked at Han Shuo and said, I'm Fabian, a member of the Empire's Buzzed Merchant Guild. If you have anything to sell or buy in the future, you can find me at the Buzzed Merchant Guild. This is my address, keep it safe. The Buist Merchant Guild was one of the largest merchant guilds in the empire and was controlled by the Buist family. Even with Han Shua's ignorance and inexperience, he had heard of some of the Buist Merchant Guild's remarkable abilities. Now that he heard Fabian's words, Han Shua immediately put away the hard piece of paper that Fabian had handed over and said with a smile, "Mr. Fabian, it's a pleasure to meet you. Perhaps there really will be a time when I'll need your help in the future. The forest troll won't dare disturb you anymore. Our business ends here, goodbye." Han Shua didn't say anything else after he'd finished speaking. He gave the little skull an order, and the man and the skeleton quickly disappeared into the distance. "Hey, brave mercenaries, I think our business can continue." Fabian couldn't help but cheer when he saw Han Shua suddenly leave. He walked towards the mercenaries who were tending to their wounds in the distance. Chapter 48. After leaving Fabian, Han Shua headed straight for the outskirts of the dark forest, taking the same paths he had taken before. Han Shua continued to train his magical yuan along the way. After his body had been reconstructed in the solid realm, Han Shua could be said to have been reborn anew. His training in magical yuan was now fruitful, and his magical yuan could circulate to all parts of his body as he willed it. There were 9 levels to training in magical yuan, and Han Shua had now reached the 2nd level, opening the meridians. The training of opening the meridians was a bit different from the solid realm. It mainly focused on the process of expanding the meridians of the entire body, greatly increasing the width and toughness of the meridians. Every time he trained, the process of opening the meridians was extremely painful, as if there were bugs gnawing at his meridians. The first 3 levels of demonic magic, the solid body, the opening of the meridians, and the molded spirit were the most basic parts. The further one progressed, the more difficult it would be to train. However, with the experience of training in the solid realm, Han Shou had already understood that the training of demonic magic was accompanied by pain and inhuman torture. The inhuman pain of the opening of the meridians level was also within his expectations. He harnessed his unyielding will and used his magical yuan to expand his meridians over and over again. After 12 days of training and hurrying on his way, Han Shua didn't run into Fanny and the others along the way. He finally walked out of the dark forest alone and once again arrived at the town of Droll in the evening. Compared to a month ago, Han Shua's strength, spirit, and appearance had all undergone tremendous changes after experiencing the trials of the dark forest. Han Shua was now a bit over 1.7 meters tall. Although his body wasn't very muscular, he no longer appeared thin and weak. After the baptism of fresh blood, Han Shua's courage and knowledge had all greatly increased. His entire temperament had also undergone some mysterious changes. Han Shua himself didn't even know that he was slowly changing. At dusk, the town of Droll was brimming with a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere. Many adventurers had returned from the dark forest. Some had faces full of sorrow after losing their companions, while others had satisfied smiles on their faces after obtaining abundant items. They planned on spending a good time in the town of Droll. When Han Shua returned to the town of Droll, he first went to where Jean and the others had stored their warhorses. Han Shua observed from afar and discovered that the warhorses they'd rented from the military were still there. He immediately understood that Fanny and the others hadn't returned to the town of Droll yet. Although they'd spent gold coins on the warhorses, the necromancy teachers and students still only had the right to use them. They still had to return the warhorses to the city guards of Zajoski when they'd returned to Droll. Since the warhorses were still there, this meant that Fanny and the others hadn't left yet. Han Shua naturally knew that he would be much faster than Fanny and the others if he'd hurried on without stopping. Perhaps Fanny and the others would encounter magical creatures along the way and be delayed. Therefore, it was within Han Shua's expectations that Fanny and the others hadn't returned. When he arrived at the small hotel that Fanny and the others had stayed in, Han Shua walked up to the owner's counter and said with a slight smile, "I'd like to stay." The shopkeeper was squinting his eyes as he ate his fruit. He lifted his head to look at Han Shua and said lazily, "Hey, it's you. Give me 10 copper coins. That storeroom is always empty. You can go over now." Last time, when Han Shuo had come with Jean and the others, Jean had specially rented a warehouse for Han Shuo and had been looked down upon by the owner. Therefore, when the owner saw that it was Han Shuo, he naturally assumed that with Han Shuo's status, he could only rent that warehouse. Not angry, Han Shuo smiled faintly and took out the money pouch from his waist. He shook it with a clatter and poured out a gold coin onto the round wooden table. He flicked a glance at the owner and said, "I don't want to stay in the warehouse." The owner, who had been lazy just a moment ago, suddenly sat up with a whoosh and picked up the gold coin on the round table. A professional smile quickly appeared on his face and he said loudly, Of course. How could a warehouse be worth 1 gold coin? Cute little fellow, just tell me which room you'd like to stay in. 1 gold coin is only more, no less." The treatment of gold coins was completely different indeed. Han Shuo smiled faintly and nodded. "I'd like the room that the female teacher stayed in last time. You make the arrangements." No problem at all. Here's the key, 1 gold coin is enough for you to stay there for 5 days. Do you have any other requests, little fellow? The owner was all smiles as he merrily took out a key from the drawer behind the table and handed it to Han Shuo, asking with a flattering tone. "Nothing else, go back to your work." Han Shuo took the key and headed straight for the room that Fanny had stayed in before. He thought to himself that the power of money had the same miraculous effects no matter which world he was in. It looked like gold coins were the most indispensable thing in order to establish a foothold in this world. When he arrived at the room that Fanny had stayed in before, Han Shuo put down his belongings and took a nice, hot bath in the bathtub. Thinking back to his encounter with Fanny last time, Han Shuo felt a wave of flames steaming out of his body. His lower body was already uncontrollably becoming hard. Cursing inwardly, Han Shuo stood up completely naked and picked up a dry towel from the side to wipe his body. He was about to leave the bathroom when he saw his well-built body in the large mirror on the side. In the mirror, Han Shuo's muscles bulged and his body was well-proportioned. His skin had taken on a bronze color after this period of exposure to the sun, looking healthy, powerful, and full of masculinity. It was a world of difference from his previous frail and skinny self. Pinching his chest muscles that were neither too big nor too small, he struck a few poses in front of the mirror. Han Shuo narcissistically pointed at his reflection in the mirror and praised, "Little fellow, you're quite handsome." After leaving the hotel, Han Shuo first went to the clothing store and spent 1 gold coin to purchase a set of soft, first-rate underwear. He wore it under the errand boy uniform that the academy had previously distributed. Afterwards, Han Shuo went to the weapons store and spent 10 gold coins to purchase a dagger of even better quality. He spent 4 gold coins to buy 15 sharp steel needles to pin to his thighs, and 6 gold coins to buy a miniature crossbow to hide in his sleeves, fully arming his body. Afterwards, Han Shuo went to the medicine store and took out 40 gold coins to buy some potions and powders. Apart from some simple medical supplies, there were also some anesthetic and hallucinogenic aphrodisiac powders, and a bottle of poison. Some of these things were prohibited from being sold in the Empire's Asen city. Even if Han Shuo had the money and didn't have the connections, he still wouldn't be able to get his hands on them. However, in the town of Droll, they could be openly sold because adventurers needed them. Since Han Shuo had come here, and now that he understood the importance of strength, he naturally had to buy some in case he needed them in the future. After all these things were in his hands, Han Shuo finally sighed with emotion at how good it felt to be rich. After walking out of the medicine store, even Han Shuo's spine was straighter than usual. With gold coins in his purse, it seemed that everything suddenly went smoothly. On the way to the hotel, Han Shuo's stomach churned when he saw a few big and small taverns with bright lights. Afterwards, Han Shuo complied with his body's needs and turned into one of the taverns. The tavern was extremely noisy and the neon lights flickered chaotically on the roof. A few adventurers and merchants gathered in groups of 3 to 5 on the tables and chairs in the hall, talking loudly about their adventures. These people's faces were flushed red and they held wine cups in their hands, shouting and chatting without the slightest scruple in their drunken stupor. Delicacies were placed everywhere on the tables, and a few young male and female attendants shuttled back and forth among them, serving them fine wine and dishes. Han Shuo walked straight to the only empty table in the corner of the hall and sat down. A bashful young attendant quickly walked in front of Han Shuo and asked politely, "Excuse me, what would you like?" "Good wine, good meat, give me some." Han Shuo took out a gold coin and flicked his thumb onto the attendant's plate, casually opening his mouth to instruct. When the attendant saw the gold coin land, his eyes immediately lit up and he bowed even more respectfully. Without batting an eyelid, he put away the gold coin and said softly with a smile, "All right, please wait a moment, it will be served immediately." Since he had a gold coin, he should enjoy it to the fullest. Han Shuo leaned lazily against his chair and narrowed his eyes as he sized up the various adventurers and merchants in the hall. Some of them had just returned from the dark forest, while others were about to enter. Some had just escaped danger, while others were planning on entering unknown dangers. All of them were letting loose their inhibitions and releasing their energy, thoroughly enjoying the depravity of the town of Droll. After a while, a bottle of light purple wine, 3 large plates of roasted meat, and 2 plates of fruits were delivered to Han Shuo's table by the bashful attendant. "This is Purple Leilon, the most famous wine in the town of Droll. All adventurers love to drink this. I hope you will be satisfied." The attendant pointed at the bottle of light purple wine and introduced it after setting down the items, then bowed and retreated. Han Shuo couldn't wait any longer as he grabbed the roasted meat and started wolfing it down. Although the taste wasn't as delicious as when he'd roasted it himself, it was still pretty good. Twisting open the bottle, a large mouthful of purple Leilon flowed down his throat. The luscious sweetness carried a hint of fiery heat, and the mellow aftertaste lingered in his mouth after entering his stomach, giving Han Shuo a different kind of enjoyment. "Good wine indeed," Han Shuo praised. When he lifted his head to look around, he suddenly saw 2 familiar faces walk in from the doorway, Claude and Irene. Claude and Irene looked around, as if searching for an empty seat. Their gazes fell upon Han Shuo at the same time. After a moment of surprise, they actually started walking in Han Shuo's direction at the same time. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.